Mr. Speaker, if I may, in another day of reflection in our nation's history, as the hurricane leaves our fellow countrymen on the Gulf Coast, devastated with another manifestation of climate change, when citizens in Kenosha are now protesting as to what appears to have been another example of excessive use of force, I nonetheless stand before this body today with a great degree of optimism, as today we are in a position in moving away from a social injustice that's long been embedded in this nation and in the state. And of course, I speak of environmental injustice or environmental justice. It's been 30 years since that's come into our national consciousness. It started in the city of Houston, that determined that although there was only 25% of that city's population was African American, 100% of the landfills were in their neighborhoods. I won't go through the examples that are replete throughout our great country, but we'll bring it to 2019 here in New Jersey with a DEP study. Listen to these numbers. If you're an African American, you're subjected to 56% more air pollution than your consumption is responsible for. If you're Hispanic or Latino, it's even more, 63% more of being exposed to of air pollution than you're responsible for in your consumption. Now, if the pigment of your skin is like mine, like it is for more than half of us in this room, we are subjected, if you will, to 17.5% less than we're responsible for consuming. Asthma rates among city dwellers, among African Americans, or especially children, are at close to 20%, where their peers who are Caucasian and don't live in cities are at 10%. Whether it's asthma or cardio disease or developmental delays or other related illnesses that are impacted by air pollution, it's a significant factual disparity. I just want to take a moment to talk about the ironbound. That's an area down neck that probably everybody in this room is familiar with as a part of my beloved Essex County. 4 square miles. Now, we all know it for the beautifully, meticulously maintained homes, for the greatest of the ethnic foods that you could find anywhere, being at the doorstep of that jewel that's the New Jersey Pack. But yet, in that 4 square miles, there are 3 Superfund sites, 2 power plants, and an incinerator, let alone the pollution that derives from the proximity to the international airport and the marine traffic. I'll take you in my car on a 10-minute drive just a little west of there, where there's many 4 square mile communities of the same population. You won't find as much as 1 septic system, let alone all of those other burdens. So what can we do about it, Mr. Speaker and members? We've defined through this legislation what an overburdened community is. And we've tried to do that through the smallest grouping that the New Jersey, or not the New Jersey, but the Federal Census Bureau has defined. They're known as census blocks. And that they are 169,000 census blocks in the state of New Jersey. So you could do the math, take 9 million and divide it by that number. So if in any of those census blocks, either 35% of the households are under what's considered low income, or 40% of those households have minority residents, or 40% of those households speak English as a second language, then they will be deemed to be overburdened. So how does that play into environmental justice? Well, under the Federal Clean Air Act, the state issues what are known as Title V permits. Those are for places that produce air pollution, sludge processing facilities, major sewer treatment plants, landfills, scrap metal facilities, incinerators. And if to be cited in one of the overburdened communities someone is looking for a license, then there's a new process known as environmental justice. There will be a survey that will be done relative to the impact on the community. There will be transparent public airing, if you will, of this issue. And if that overburdened community has an undue impact based on the health determined through this new request for a license, it will be rejected. Now, what does that do to the 237 other Title V licenses that are out there that already by law have to be renewed either at 5-year or 10-year increments? And what that does will, again, create the exact same process. Now, the difference being is that those facilities are not to be closed, but rather, if the DEP and the determination is that there is an unbalanced view, then there will be additional conditions that will be placed upon those license holders, either through their expansion or through their renewal, that will lessen the burden on those communities. Now, Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, the protection of environment and public health is essential to our prosperity. It does not impede it. There are going to be more jobs that will be created through these new conditions that will need to occur. The EDA will find themselves involved if there are places, and there won't be very many, quite frankly. Just looking in the last 5 years, I think there's been 2 or 3 that will be cited. And if not, in the communities that are already overburdened, we'll find another place for them. My daughter was lucky enough to be a student at Wake Forest when Maya Angelou was a visiting professor. And I think she said something that is just apropos to where we are today. Do the best you can until you know better. And then once you know better, do better. My colleagues in the legislature, there's 120 people in this building today imbued with the grand privilege of being in a position to do better. Mr. Speaker, I proudly move the bill, and I would ask you all to join me in doing better today. Thank you.